Thank you. I call the meeting to order. Any disclosure, any pecuniary in particular? No, I had it right.
Pecuniary.
Pecuniary, I said that. Pecuniary interest under the municipal conflict investment. Trying to get that right for 12 years, but it's really good. Except today, Chris White got it wrong, so they messed me right up.
You corrected him?
Yeah, I did. I did. I don't see any conflict though. Eh? We're all good. Jean, you're good? Jean hears?
Councillor Anderson, are you able to respond?
You're muted.
Oh. I just want to make sure the technology is working.
It's not.
It's not. Okay.
It's muted or something.
There's the new form. Yes, thank you.
You're muted, I think, Jean.
Yeah.
She's not.
Just wave if you can hear us. Oh. Okay. All right. You have no conflict, I take it. Yep. Okay, good. Actually, what we're trying out tonight is, as we know, we hit a bylaw a little while ago about hybrid meetings, and if we run into either weather problems or somebody is not feeling well enough to come in, then by all means they can come in via the internet. So Jean's our sort of our guinea pig tonight. It's the first time we've tried it this way, so we'll see how that goes. So thanks everybody for that. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Elliott, that the minutes of the Town of Minto October 4th, 2022 regular council meeting be approved. All in favor? That is carried. Additional business, I have one. Dave, Mark, Jeff, I'm going to look down this side. We're good? Okay, good. Moved by Deputy Mayor Turton, second by Councillor Johnson, the Town of Minto Council convenes in the Committee of Adjustments. All in favor? Jean, are you going to just raise your hand if you're good? If you have any questions, just let me know, right?
I can always maybe phone her too if we need to get her
If we need.
verbally. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Good. All right. So the first item we've got on the agenda today is a meeting to public hearing in order to state for the Harris Sharp 213 Queen Street, South Harrison. I will call the public meeting to order and state any decision reached by the committee today cannot be used to set a precedent. Each application considered by the committee is dealt with on its own merits, and no two applications are exactly the same. I'll state the following. Public meetings to consider a minor variance application MV 2022-13 Bob Harris on behalf of Richard Sharp. I will call the Secretary Treasurer McRob to state the following information. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Bridge. The property subject to the proposed minor variance application is legally described as Lot 1, northeast south of Queen Street, Plan Town of Harrison, subject to an easement over Part 2, Plan 61R20686, as in WC 464936, Town of Minto, and is municipally known as 211-213 Queen Street South in the Town of Minto. The subject property is approximately 0.19 acres or 0.08 hectares. The purpose and effect of this minor variance application is to provide relief from Section 12.2.2.5 and Section 6.37BI of the Town of Minto's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 0186 as amended, to permit for a reduced front yard setback and encroachment into the front yard setback for a semi-detached dwelling. Section 12.2.2.5 requires a minimum front yard setback of 6 meters or 19.7 feet, whereas 4.26 meters or 13.98 feet is existing. Section 6.37B1 permits for an unclosed porch to encroach up to 3 meters, 9.8 feet from the front property line, whereas a 3.57 meter or 11.75 feet encroachment is existing. Additional relief may be considered at this meeting. The notices were mailed to the property owners within 200 feet or 60 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on September 29th, 2022. Reports and comments have been received from the senior planner from Wellington County, as well as the planning technician for the Town of Minto. I advise that the only person so far that has registered to speak is Bob Harris.
Thank you. And, okay, I'll start it off with maybe getting our town director of building and planning services, Terry, to present the towns.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and good evening. As mentioned, the address of the property subject to this minor variance is 211 to 213 Queen Street South in the former town of Harriston. The property is owned by Richard Sharp and the individual that's constructing this semi-detached dwelling on it. And the applicant for this minor variance is Bob Harris, who's with us this evening. The property underwent a rezoning application in early 2022, April of this year, to permit the construction of single-family dwellings on the 3 vacant lots. At that time, it was indicated on the application there was no site-specific zoning relief needed for reduction in any setbacks, and that the individual lots could house a semi-detached dwelling without any issues. Subsequently, building permit was applied for one of the lots. The drawings that were submitted and formed the basis of the issuance of the building permit complied with the zoning bylaw and the Ontario Building Code. During the construction process, an application for an exemption from part lot control was submitted to the town. With that was accompanied a reference plan which indicates the existing building as well as the setbacks on it. And as indicated in the notice, there were deficiencies noted on the reference plan. So specifically the front yard setback as well as the encroachment for the covered porch, which those distances were read out. When town staff received the reference plan, we reached out to the surveyor to verify that there was any errors or omissions on the plan, and there was none indicated. And the surveyor indicated that the dimensions shown are the as constructed dimensions. So staff reached out to the applicant to find out exactly what the circumstances are in behind the discrepancy from the issued plans that complied to the site-built dwelling. The owner indicated that, or sorry, the builder indicated that he situated the semi-detached building in the location that it was to match with the adjacent houses. Unfortunately, the semi-detached is still 4 feet closer to the front property line than the adjacent houses, so it didn't really, match with what his intent was. Before town can proceed with the part lot control exemption, the zoning deficiency have to be addressed, hence why we're here tonight. As the outcome for the minor variance won't be known until in a few minutes, I'm assuming, town staff did have to put an order to comply and a stop work order on the project. If the application's denied, we couldn't have allowed him to continue building as we've got other issues to deal with to ascertain the status of the semi. As mentioned, we did receive a few reports. One was from Wellington County Planning Department, and Matt's here to speak to that tonight. Generally speaking, they were in favor of the minor variance application and are recommending the approval of it. Matt can speak in addition to that in a minute if you want. Staff did meet to discuss the front yard setback relief, and staff are not in support of the reduction in the front yard, as the average size of a vehicle would actually be hanging onto municipal property. The average vehicle is over the 13.98 feet that is from the front wall of the garage to the property line itself. The zoning bylaw looks at the minimum required, and in the garage, there is the potential for the required parking space to be located there. Town staff looked at it from a functionality standpoint. Most people park in the driveway, not in their garage. The garage is an additional storage space, so the anticipation would be majority of the property owners of that semi will be parked in their driveway, majority of the time. The thing that town staff were concerned about would be damage to the vehicles from snow removal. As the snow plows are going down the road, they're going to be blasting the vehicles with chunks of sand and salt and stuff like that, leaving the town open for liability. The other item that Public Works was concerned about or noted that side of Queen Street is where a future sidewalk will be replaced and located on. So that's right now from the edge of asphalt, if the road stays the same during reconstruction, the sidewalk will be 5 feet closer to the dwelling unit than current. So staff also looked at the garage itself to be used for the one official required parking space. In the garage, there's a set of stairs that have been constructed out of concrete. Unfortunately, they're wide enough that they would encroach into the minimum required parking space, making it unusable. Instead of asking Mr. Harris to block off the doorway, remove the stairs, town staff did measurements, and if those stairs are removed and stairs constructed to the minimum building code tread depth, that would get those stairs outside of that 3 meter by 6 meter parking space. So that would open up the garage for the legal parking space to be provided. And additionally, concerns were raised about whether there's any grading impacts from the relocation of the dwelling. So being at 6 feet closer than what's required, if that has any impact with the submitted grading plan. So as you've seen in my report, staff did not make a recommendation to the committee for approval or denial. If approved, staff are requesting 3 conditions be added to the approval. The first being an encroachment agreement. The intent with this would be to indemnify the town from any liability of damage to property or vehicles or the structure itself from any snow removal activity or any of our normal operations. This agreement would be registered on title and would be binding to all future, current and future owners of each side of the semi. And this would be done at the sole expense of the applicant. The revised grading plan to address our concerns about the modification to the grading with respect to the location of the semi is also a condition we are requesting. And lastly, to do with the parking space in the garage, condition to remove the existing stairs and create minimum code compliant stairs there to allow for the physical parking space within the garage. The conditions of the approval must be addressed before the stop work order is lifted. So even if it gets approved tonight, Bob won't be able to get started until those 3 in addition to the appeal period, sorry, those 3 conditions have been addressed as well. If denied, the owner does have the option of appealing the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If the decision is reversed by the OLT, so it gets denied tonight, the OLT approves it, then that will be the final binding decision. If the decision is upheld, so the decision to deny is upheld by the OLT, town staff will have to seek a court order to cause the demolition of the semi-detached dwelling. The cost to obtain that order would be on behalf of the town, so the town would have to put out the capital for those legal expenses. The demolition and removal would be on the owner, in addition to the costs that they have already put out for the construction of the semi. As mentioned previously, staff would like to mention that if the minor variance application is approved, the encroachment agreement and any provisions that are within it would have to go back to council for approval. Staff has not started drafting up that encroachment agreement. We're awaiting a decision tonight. We also would like to iterate that minor variance decisions are not precedent setting. And one decision made on an application cannot be used as the justification for a different minor variance application or for future decisions. So regardless of what the decision is, if a dwelling is being built, relatively in the same parameters as this, in the future, the committee can't use the decision of this to form basis of approving or refusing an application down the road. Staff would also like to mention moving forward with any future buildings, the building department will be requiring the applicant prior to moving past the foundation stage to obtain the services of an Ontario land surveyor to verify the location of the foundation prior to it moving forward. This isn't a unique situation. Other municipalities have this implemented. Not something that I wanted to do, just due to the additional costs as well as the delay in construction in arranging these people to come in and verify the installation. believe that is all I wanted to add, but if there's any questions, I am
Well,
open to
I
take
think
them.
we're going to go to
Oh, sure.
Matt, and then we'll go to Bob, and then we'll open it up for questions on this one, I think, because everybody's going to have their say first, and then we'll have the questions. Matt, can you give us the county perspective?
Sure, yes, I'm happy to do so. So again, through you, Chair, before you is a minor variance application to provide relief from the minimum front yard setback to the dwelling and the minimum front yard encroachment to an unenclosed porch. So as Terry had mentioned, the applicant is in the final stages of construction for the semi-detached dwelling. The applicant is proposing a minimum front yard setback of 4.26 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 6 meters, and a yard encroachment of 2.43 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 3 meters for an unenclosed porch to the road allowance, which is an important distinction from the paved roadway. So planning staff note that the bylaw requires 1 parking space per semi-detached unit, so which the applicant has provided in the form of a private parking garage. As a note to the applicant, the building department has noted that the steps in the garage, as Terry had mentioned, will need to be reconfigured to ensure that the minimum 3 meters by 6 meters minimum is maintained. So I had the opportunity to visit the site in question and note that the dwellings in the neighborhood are fairly close to the front property line. The applicant has indicated that, that was his intent when construction and, placing exactly that location of semi where he had. Like I said, just to essentially match the character of the neighborhood. So furthermore, I would add sort of in closing here that the driveway leading to the garage may be used as a temporary parking space rather than permanent. During my site visit, I had no issues parking my personal vehicle. Again, it's only a car, but there was probably another half car length that was, there to the paved roadway rather than the road allowance. So planning staff ultimately have no concerns with the application as the request is minor, meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. And as Terry had mentioned, if the application is approved, planning staff, have worked with town staff to prepare a list of conditions to, like I said, are recommending a list of conditions if approved. And yeah, I welcome any questions.
Okay. I think we'll turn it over to Bob. Bob, did you want to make some comments?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you've heard the other two comments, so if you want to get, sorry, go up there, Bob, if you could, just because the mic will pick you up for the,
Is it on?
you're good. Yeah, good.
I think I haven't said anything, but we pretty well covered everything, and I have no problems with the building department. We've gone along excellent, and we can stand here all night and point fingers. But it all comes back to me in the end. So, yes, in 50 years, I've never had a minor variance asked in my life, so it's something new to me, and I think all we can do is address it and work together and figure it out. As the planner said, I appreciate his comments. It blends in with the neighborhoods, supposing it doesn't meet the requirements, so I guess we'll have to put our heads together and see if we can come up with a conclusion. Other than that, thanks very much for your time.
Just a
Anybody have any questions?
Just a quick question I want to ask you, Bob. So you heard some of the encroachment thing and whatever. So those conditions you would be all right with?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have no problem with.
All right. That's what I wanted. Yeah,
They're
that's,
very simple.
yeah, good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll turn it open to any questions, but that was my question.
So I know that there's no one registered, but there are people
Oh.
in the audience.
Would anybody want to speak to this? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, yeah, okay. Well, you'll be more discussion, so you maybe, okay, anybody got any questions on it? Mark, and then, Dave?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Was Mr. Sharp aware of the zoning setbacks before the build started, or?
I don't know if he was aware of the setbacks before the build started. There was no deficiencies at that time. It was after construction started. So I'm not sure if he was aware at that point, but Since he needed to sign off on the minor variance, and he's well aware, and I believe he may even be watching in tonight. So it's, yeah, he is aware of what's going on.
So, okay, my other,
Yep,
the
Wayne?
lot size, could you tell me what the depth of that lot is?
Oh, didn't bring my survey sketch. It is deep. 38 meters wide, which is, no, depth, sorry, that's a touch over 100 feet. The rear yard setback, is that's listed there as well. I think it's,
13.86 meters.
okay, 13.86 from the back of the building to the rear property line, whereas 7.6 meters is required. So it's almost double what a minimum required rear yard would be.
So there is room, there was room to actually place this building there without,
Correct, yeah.
without a minor variance.
Yep.
And then my other comment would be to compare it to the neighboring houses, which have been there, some have been there 100 years. This stuff didn't even exist then. It doesn't make sense to compare it to that. But anyway, that's my comment on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have Dave and then.
Yes, thank you.
Judy.
Mayor Bridgman, have you ever seen this before?
Through you, Chair, in what regard?
Well, so, I mean, obviously, there was a mistake. It got put too close to the road. And I mean, minor variances can correct things, so minor variances can allow things to proceed, but it's not going to correct it. So what we're looking at is 2 driveways and one drive parking spot per house, which you have to park in the garage. And if somebody does park on the driveway, I mean, that's what the encroachment issues are going to stop. Our snowplow throws snow or ice, whatever, up on a car and it's scratched, we're not responsible. I mean, how do we stop it from happening?
Yeah, so through you, Chair, I'd say perhaps the order of operations that things went with this file is out of the ordinary. I think typically, we like to have a pre-consult meeting and, iron out any deficiencies or, setbacks and really point out, this is what things should look like. And then move forward from that point, if a variance is needed or a zone amendment or whatever the case might be. And then, like I said, at that point, go through the minor variance ahead of any construction. I can say in my time at the county, I haven't seen the reverse occur, but there's a first for everything, I suppose.
Always the first. Thank you.
Judy?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered. And I think I know the answer to the question that I still want to ask, which
Sure.
is, there's still 2 semi-detached homes to be built on this property, or maybe they don't have to be semi-detached. There's 2 more
There's 2 more lots, I believe.
Correct, yep.
lots, or whatever ends up being on there. I guess I'm just assuming that after all this, the next one will be in the right spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would assume so too.
That would be my concern, right?
Yep.
So that's good, but my other questions were all answered.
Okay, Ron?
Thank you.
This sounds kind of dumb, but the garage door, if it's open and a car halfway in and halfway out, does that provide a parking spot? I don't know. So
So that's a first for me. I have, no one has ever approached me with that question
They don't
before.
put the door on the garage, does that become part of the driveway?
That is an excellent question, and I don't know the proper answer to it, being because it's partway in what Matt mentioned about the driveway permitting the temporary parking space versus the garage being a permanent one. So my inkling being it's kind of split between temp and permanent would be no. It couldn't be counted as the required parking space. But with the modifications to the interior stairs in the garage, that would allow for the proper parking space.
Sure, I wouldn't think that would happen, but I just wondered whether that would be a note if somebody wanted to use that.
Maybe only in Palmerston. No, I just.
I haven't got a garage.
In Harrison.
Jeff?
Thanks, Mayor Bridge. Terry, just wondering, is there like a monetary penalty for staff time and extra work that they've had to do for this?
So far, the only additional expenses that Mr. Harris has encountered would be the application for the minor variance itself. So that's $2,000 to allow the town to process, or town staff to process the application. In the creation of the encroachment agreement, there will be additional expenses for staff time, legal costs for registering on title, that sort of thing. As I mentioned, we've never done this before, at least in my history here with the town. So I don't have a template, so I'll be drafting it up from scratch, and they do take time. They are not simple agreements, so there will be additional expenses there. Ballparking, I would imagine around 3,000 to 4,000 in expenses just for the encroachment agreement component.
Jean, let's see
Yep.
if you can, oh, you're talking.
Can you
Good.
hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
I'm on my phone, so
All right.
it's a small view unfortunately, but it doesn't find my mic on my computer.
Go ahead.
So I have a question about this. If they're talking about, they're gonna fix the garage, and that would be a parking space, but temporarily they're gonna use the driveway, but the driveway, now I wasn't sure. Matt said he parked there and he was half a car length to the edge of the road or the road allowance.
Matt, do you want to?
Sure. So through you, Chair. I guess the first part of the question or comment with regards to the garage is, so the stairs are being reconfigured as we speak, if I'm not mistaken. So that issue will be sorted. They'll have the minimum 3x6, and that'll be sorted. With regards to my vehicle, when I park there, like I said, I only have a small car, so keep that in mind. So I parked there in front of the garage, and there was another maybe half car length to the road. So as Terry mentioned, if the town decides to put a sidewalk or extend the road, whatever the case might be, 5 years from now, whenever that timeline is, it's a different story if my car has 1 meter, 0 meters, whatever the case might be. So that's just another sort of layer.
So it depends on the vehicle, I guess, Jean, too. Like,
Yep.
so it's close enough.
So if we do that, and they're saying they're gonna attach this to the title of the property,
Mhm.
does that really cover us down the road if, as they say, we put in a sidewalk or they widen the road and they're clearing the snow and a car gets damaged?
I do believe it will if we draft it right, but
And is this house in line with the other houses on the property? Or are the houses on the street, or is it ahead of them? It looks in the picture like it's slightly ahead of them. Because do the other houses have this issue?
I did, Jean, it's Terry. I did
Yep.
do a site visit or a tour down Lawrence Street,
Mm-hmm.
and eyeballing the two white aluminum sided houses adjacent to it. The front face of the semi is about 4 feet closer to Queen Street than the existing two.
Okay.
that's
So
what I.
if we didn't allow this variance to go through, they have to take the building down? Is that what we're saying?
That is the only option. If
Wow.
if the appeal is upheld at the OLT, then that is the road we'd have to go down. Just so the committee's aware, it wouldn't be cheap on us to do that. I would anticipate our legal fees on just our side would be in the neighborhood of 80 to 100,000 to do it. It's not a simple process, so.
Yeah, and you've already set a place, because that was my concern is, okay, I can see, you sort of maybe let this one go through and you work together, as Mr. Harris said, but how do you ensure that this doesn't happen again? Because like if you're building houses, you knew the lot alignments. I don't understand sort of how this happened. There's lots of room at the back. The property's quite lengthy.
And that's what I mentioned about future builds and having to get the surveyor out to verify the location of the foundation prior to moving on.
Right.
It's easier and a lot more economical to knock down just a foundation or modify a foundation than it is to, a 75% complete house.
Right. Yes.
So that's going to be the
that makes
check.
good sense.
Yep.
Yeah. You're just going, okay, thank you.
Mark, one more.
One more through you, Mr. Mayor. So that the staff doesn't support the minor variance, but if the conditions are met, they do. Is that correct?
So the staff is not forming a position one way or the other. I'm just giving you both options so that if committee approves it, these are what staff would like. If the committee denies the application, then these are the steps that the staff would have to go through.
Thanks.
So, and let me just sum it up if everybody's had a chance to speak. I think the staff have worked hard and that's why I asked Bob that question at the beginning, if he was willing to go with the recommendations of the staff. I really don't think we want to take down a property that we need. Of course, we need the properties in town, but at the same token, and we've talked about the fact that we're looking at how this happened. We'll figure that out, and Terry's going to come up with some ideas to make sure that we don't have this problem again. But at the end of the day, I think what the staff are saying is it's really our decision politically because we either can go the route of eventually maybe tearing it down and costing a lot of money for all sides, or trying to come up with a compromise. And I do believe we'll be all right with the way we've worked on having the encroachment agreement. The concern we have is if somebody has a pickup truck or something bigger or whatever, there's going to be snow hitting it when we plow. So that person that buys the property will have to know that, so we don't get called upon every time that happens, and we, you know, a light goes out at the back, tail light or something like that. And we have room in the garage to park, so that person still has the option now that we've taken the stairs out. So I think it was a mistake done. I think the staff have made good recommendations as how they would fix it if we decide to go that route, because that's important that they do that for us, because otherwise we have just a black and white decision, which isn't very easy to do because it would be a tough one. So if I summed it up correctly, Terry?
Yes, yep, exactly.
So I know we don't, we at this point in time, we want to get through this project, and then I believe the staff will come back with recommendations how this won't happen again. And that's what we can look at a later date.
Yeah, and I wasn't thinking of modifying the building bylaw to do it across the board, but just in certain instances. So, yeah.
That you might be, because my other concern is I understand what Terry is mentioning, the fact that getting a surveyor, but we know surveyors are very difficult to get a hold of half the time, and their timetable is very badly. We don't want to make construction unbearable too. So we'll try to come up, but that'll be the council will get that direction under the new mayor and down the road. But tonight we have this decision to make, and we really want to make it as quickly as possible because there's a stop order on this building. And I don't think then, as you're saying, Terry, we can't take the stop order off until we have the next, which is the first of
So in reviewing like the upcoming or the next council meeting schedule and then inauguration after that, I can anticipate that town staff will have time to develop the encroachment agreement, have all parties review it, comment on it back, and then bring it forward to the November 1st.
Okay, you're not
I don't feel it's going to give anyone fair opportunity on either side to review the requirements in it.
right.
So unfortunately, it's looking like the first meeting in December is when the encroachment agreement could come back.
I want to know the timing on that, so it won't be the first.
It unfortunately, it wouldn't be fair to anyone to get it.
So is anybody, Bob? Yeah.
When you're talking about these measurements, I myself measured from the bridge floor to the edge of the asphalt, I'm 24 feet. The neighboring properties are 18 to the south and 15 right across the street, and the one down the street is 50. So, I mean, yes, there's a problem, but it's not any worse than we're making out tonight. And I nothing for 2 months. We haven't even got, we were supposed to dig the sewer lines in and we haven't got them. If we wait till December, it isn't gonna happen till spring. So, I can't hold the project up for 2 months for a bit of paperwork.
So depends on being the encroachment agreement hasn't been drafted up. I would strongly doubt that your lawyer would give the town a letter saying that you would agree to anything. Being you don't know and your lawyer doesn't know what the provisions are. I just can't see that we can develop the agreement, have our lawyers verify it, circulate it to both yourselves as well as town staff to review it in 13 days. Like, and that's,
I can see that, but, if we give the go-ahead tonight, then I'm going to assure that you'll do what's, needs to be done to get this done in the right manner, and trust me, it will never happen. There's 2 more lots there, and they will meet the right setbacks, so it's not gonna happen again. But in between times, I've got to carry on with drywall and whatever we have to do.
and unfortunately, until the conditions are met, I can't allow that to happen. Regardless of that, council needs to approve the encroachment agreement and authorize the clerk and the mayor to sign it. Which, if it can't happen, and I'm just going from my, just saying it for myself, I don't think it can happen in the 13 days and give everyone appropriate time to review everything. So yeah, it's, unless I get direction from council later to,
I guess, Terry, we can discuss that later, but I mean, tonight, what we have to do is, one way or the other, we have to give you a decision sort of to go forward. Otherwise, you can't even start that.
Exactly,
process.
yep.
So we'll start that, Bob, tonight. At this point in time, I'll call the question and ask if people are willing. And how we got this written up?
So through you, Chair Bridge, if you'd like, I could read the approval with the conditions.
Is that what everybody here wants, or you want to go the other route? It's up. There's only 2 routes to go here.
I think we need to go with the division to approve.
Okay, so let's read that one, and then
I'll
we'll
read that
vote
one out.
on it, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. That the Town of Minto Committee of Adjustment approves the application by Robert Bob Harris on behalf of Richard Sharp for property legally described as Lot 1, Northeast South Side, Queen Street, Plan Town of Harriston, subject to an easement over Part 2, Plan 61R20686, as in WC 464936, Town of Minto, municipally known as 211-213 Queen Street South in the Town of Minto. To provide relief from Section 12.2.2.5 and Section 6.37BI of the Town of Minto's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 0186, as amended to permit for a reduced front yard setback of 4.26 meters, which is 13.98 feet, and a 3.57 meter or 11.71 feet encroachment of the covered porch into the front yard setback for the semi-detached dwelling. The following conditions will apply. 1, an encroachment agreement is entered into with the Town of Minto to allow for the temporary parking of a personal motor vehicle on the driveway which may encroach within the road allowance. It must be to the satisfaction of the town and will be registered on title. 2, a revised grading drainage plan is provided to the satisfaction of the town. And 3, the garage parking space shall be a minimum of 3 meters width by 6 meters length unobstructed.
Okay.
We would need a mover in a second.
We're in a second for that. Deputy Mayor Turton and Councillor Elliott, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, now we'll work on the other situation, but we'll understand where you're coming from, Terry, because. Okay, so I guess I'll state, anyone wishing to receive a copy of the notice of decision of the Committee of Adjustments in respect to the minor variance application must make a written request to the clerk of the Town of Minto at 5941 Highway 89, Harrison, OG 1ZO, or an email at annaleen@town.minto.on.ca. If not, I'll just declare this meeting done. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Bob. All right.
They would do that in a hurry.
Okay.
To get done.
So you guys,
And even if, he would probably add that to the expenses.
Sure. Yeah. It's too bad. I feel bad for
I appreciate it.
It wasn't a question. Half in and half out.
We'll have to see.
Unfortunately, you won't have a meeting.
Yeah.
You might have to put it on the
Fantastic.
15th one.
Sure I can.
It's up to the new mayor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we could expedite it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get rid of all the public before asking
Yeah.
the question.
Or we'll move into committee of the whole.
Make it go faster.
Oh, you have to move into committee of the whole,
Yes,
right?
please.
Yeah, there goes your tact again.
Thank you.
That's a good one, though.
Where am I here? Oh, yeah, we are.
Sherry's always correcting me in my description.
Moved by Council Dirksen, seconded by Deputy Mayor Turton, the Town of Minto Committee of Adjustment convenes in the Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Oh, good. No public meeting, no delegations. I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor Turton to assume the chair and
Thank
talk
you.
about our audit. And we have, I'll let
Thank you,
you
Mayor Bruce.
introduce our auditor.
This evening, we have Mr. Murray Short, Robinson, Lot, Frontman. And this is our annual, and this is the first time that Murray has done that, but a little bit of history here. Murray and Gord know each other from the pond match days, so
Oh,
Murray's not a stranger. So we'll welcome Murray and ask you to step up to the mic and give us your report. We're starting likely with the council presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council, for the opportunity to present the 2021 financial statements for the corporation of the town of Minto. I will walk through the presentation first. It does kind of present some of the statements themselves, as well as some graphs that we consider to be some of the key performance indicators for the municipality. We do compare your municipality to various of our other municipal clients. We do a number of the municipalities in both Wellington and Dufferin counties. So the comparisons that we'll show are relative to those other clients. They are generally around the same size, some slightly larger, some smaller. So hopefully it's a relatively reasonable comparison, but I'll kind of give some caveats to that when I get to each of the graphs. By way of the agenda, I'll just talk a bit about kind of the audit overview, our audit process on a very high level, and then talk about the audit report and the financial statements themselves, as well as next steps for kind of finalization and conclusion of our audit. And then we're kind of on the cusp of starting our 2022 audit very soon. So, so with that said, if we can just move to the next slide, the materiality for the audit was $410,000. So that's an amount that is based on the total assets of the municipality. It's an amount that is considered to be large enough that it would impact kind of strategic decisions at the council level. So obviously on the operational level, from management standpoint, a lot of decisions made are based on much less significant dollar values. But in the grand scheme of things, if there was a $400,000 difference in these financial statements, that it might impact significant council decisions that are made. And so that's kind of the rationale for the number. In terms of our audit process, there was no change in the key audit areas, risks, or planned procedures that we plan to undertake as a result of our audit process from what we had communicated in our letter to council prior to the audit, probably around this time last year. There were no significant control deficiencies to note. We went through our audit process. It was our first audit, so we had to kind of get all of our documentation in line as far as you know, all the processes and procedures that are undertaken by staff, and we had no internal control deficiencies to report as a result of that. We have no known independence issues, so as your independent auditors, we need to be unbiased and have no vested interest in these financial results, and we have no such interest. So we are independent and able to issue our independent auditor's report. In terms of adjusting entries, the entries we made were as a result of the fact largely that the tangible capital asset activity from Citywide wasn't quite ready at the time that we were doing the audit. So much of the entries were related to getting those capital asset activities additions, disposals, all those sorts of things into the records, as well as to record reserve activity. So that's fairly standard for a lot of our municipalities, that we will record those types of entries at the end of the year. So nothing outside of those things that we discovered that needed to be adjusted in the financial statements. In terms of the audit report, if we can move on to the next slide, please.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Murray, one second. Do you want questions during the process, or do you want us to hold our questions? So
Absolutely. If you have questions,
a
jump
simple hand, then we'll get Murray's attention.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Great. So the audit report itself will be in the financial statements themselves. So this is just a slide to highlight that it is a clean audit opinion. So we've done the testing and analysis that we've had to do to be able to satisfy ourselves that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards, which is the accounting framework which all municipalities report their financial results. So I should point out that the financial statements are the financial statements of the municipality. They're not our financial statements as your auditors. We are basically second guessing or assessing management's assessments of accounting policy choices and estimates, and making sure the internal controls are all appropriate. Our audit report is the culmination of that process with our audit opinion, which, as I said, is the clean audit opinion. The next slide just highlights what financial statement of financial position is. It's equivalent to a balance sheet in the for-profit world, showing the assets, liabilities, and the accumulated surplus for the municipality at the end of each of the 2021 and 2020 fiscal years. If we jump to the next slide, you can see it here. I will get to it in a bit more detail in the financial statements themselves. I will just highlight the cash position. You can see is up by about $8.4 million. That coming from the surplus encountered in the year, as well as the loan taken late in the year, yet to be expended at the end of the year. So those two things in particular, increasing the cash position of the municipality. Down the bottom, we have the accumulated surplus, which is just over $90 million. Most of that is your investment in your tangible capital assets, the roads and infrastructure and buildings and vehicles and everything else the municipality owns, which is about 81 of that $90 million. So heading on to some of the graphs. The first graph is the graph showing cash equivalents. The green line being the town of Minto's cash position relative to your annual cash outflow. So we compare your cash position at the end of the year to the cash that you spend throughout the year. And at the end of 2021, your cash position was higher than the average for other municipalities, but again, augmented by the fact that you had that $5 million loan taken in. Normally, if you can look at the green line, you do see that it is below the average for other municipalities. That's not a judgment call. We'll get to the status of your reserves and reserve funds and your capital assets, which show a different picture. Some of these graphs sometimes look a little favorable or unfavorable. I would say take them with a grain of salt. Your cash position ultimately is what it is, but your financial position isn't a significant concern from our standpoint. The next slide shows your taxes receivable. So this shows your taxes receivable relative to the total tax that you collect, both for municipalities' own purposes as well as the county and school boards. And you can see that your municipal tax receivable position is better than the average for other municipalities, about 4% versus about 6.4% for the average of other municipal clients, and well within the low range for what the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing would consider low risk from the standpoint of your taxes receivable position. So that's certainly a positive that you're been able to keep the tax receivable balance as low as you have, and particularly over the last few years, when certain of our municipal clients have seen their tax receivable creep up as a result of COVID and some of the ratepayers having challenges making those payments. The next slide shows your long-term debt position. Again, this is another one of those ones which I would suggest you take with a grain of salt. It does look like the municipality has a pretty high debt load. It is higher than the average for other municipalities. We do have some very small rural municipalities that have no debt whatsoever. They will only fund their infrastructure to the extent that they can do that with cash without taking any debt. That would look good from the standpoint of this graph, but may suggest that they should be spending more on their infrastructure. And so, not a concern. You have strong cash positions to cover your debt, so it's not our standpoint. And the next slide in particular will highlight the fact that we're spending more on capital assets than the average rural municipalities. This is comparing your capital asset additions, or what you're spending on capital assets, relative to the amount that you're collecting in tax. The reason that we compare it to the amount you're collecting in tax is because we're trying to normalize for the size of the municipality. So a larger municipality has a higher tax base. It should be spending more on infrastructure, generally speaking. Smaller municipality has a smaller tax base, should be spending less. So if we compare it based on the tax base, that's our attempt to try and compare apples to apples. In your case, in each of the 5 years, you have spent more than the average of our municipalities on your infrastructure. So again, you do have higher debt on average, but you're spending more on capital assets, which I think is a positive in terms of managing your infrastructure. The next graph shows your capital asset additions versus budget and versus amortization. I will point out the green bars being your budget and the blue bars being what you actually spent. In each year, you're spending less than what you budget. There's a reason for that, and that's consistent across all of our municipalities. A lot of projects you budget for 1 year, it doesn't progress. You have to budget for it again the next year because you still need to incur those expenditures. So in some cases, your budget is showing the same project in more than 1 year. So we'd expect that to be the case. What we draw inference from here is comparing the blue and the yellow bars, though. The blue is your actual expenditures. The yellow is your amortization. The amortization being kind of the depletion of your assets just through wear and tear and over time. What we like to see is the blue bar being higher than the yellow bar more often than not. It's not a great comparison because the yellow bar is based on your historical cost. The blue bar is what you're spending now. And there's an inflationary component, but if the blue bar is ahead of or higher than the yellow bar in those 5 years, as yours is, then that's a suggestion that you're at least trying to do your best to stay on top of your infrastructure needs. So again, that's a positive. The next graph just shows where the capital asset additions are coming from in terms of funding sources. The purple bar being capital grants, the orange bar being from tax levies, and then the 2 different shades of green being your reserves and reserve funds. Not surprisingly, a lot of those investments coming from reserves and reserve funds. Although you have had significant grants funding some of your capital in recent years, I would say that in almost 20 years in municipal auditing that capital grants are harder to come by over the last 5 or 10 years than they were in the 10 years prior to that. So the fact that you're able to finance some of those through capital grants is a positive. So the next slide just highlights the statement of operations. So this is kind of like your income statement, again, comparing to the for-profit world, showing the revenues, expenses, and the surplus on the year. So it does show the budget and compare it, so you can compare it to actuals. It shows expenditures by department, and then the annual and accumulated surpluses. So we just jump on to the next page. You can see your taxation revenues up by about $500,000 from $5.6 million to $6.1 million. Also above your budget. The reason for that is significant supplemental taxes, higher than what you budgeted for. Also a significant decrease in write-offs in 2021 versus 2020. So those 2 things both contributing to a higher than expected taxation revenue. In terms of other revenues, again, I won't go through line by line. I will point out the gain on disposal of tangible capital assets. So the $1 million that you can see in the bottom revenue line, that was from some sales of land in the Palmerston Industrial Park. So that being a positive cash and revenue to the municipality. Grants, on the other hand, down. We do see kind of a fair amount of variability in the grants that municipalities will get from 1 year to the next, depending on programs that you apply to, especially on the capital side. So you received more in capital grants in 2020 than 2021. So the net of those things is that your revenues are actually down very slightly, 16.7 million versus 16.8 the year before. On the expenditure side, they're pretty comparable. Not a lot of variability across the departments or in total. So 13.1 million versus about 12.9 the year before, and so you wind up with an annual surplus of 3.6 million versus 3.9 the year before. And those being added to the accumulated surpluses at the start of the year to bring your total accumulated surplus up to $90 million. Again, most of it being your investment capital assets.
Go ahead,
Uh,
man.
If I could. I'm looking at grants, and is it possible that some of these grants that we got in 2020 are now being used in 21? Is that a possibility, or are these grants already used up?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one of the strange things with public sector accounting is that grants are recognized when you receive them, not when you spend them, by and large. Which means that if you receive grants for capital, it might be hitting your income in one year, but it's actually spent in the following year. So that would throw off the timing of your surplus in some cases.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So moving on to the next slide,
High charts.
we have a comparison of your expenditures by department. Not surprisingly, kind of approximately half of your expenditures in the transportation environmental services. Some of our other municipalities, the transportation component would be more. Some of them don't actually have water and sewer systems at all, and so they would have a much smaller component that's in the environmental services. But yours is fairly evenly spread throughout those two, as well as protection and rec and cultural services at just under 20% each. And if we move on to the next slide, that'll show the 5-year comparison across the various. The next statement on the next slide is the statement of changes in net financial assets. So this is kind of a comparison of your financial position, ignoring kind of the infrastructure. And so it takes out the activity of your tangible capital assets. And so if we move on to the next slide, you can see that at the top, we have the annual surplus of about 3.6 million. We adjust for all of that tangible capital asset activity, as well as the small amounts for prepaid expenses and inventory. And the net result is the change in your financial assets, which was an increase of about $2.8 million. So what this is saying is that your part of your surplus was kind of your investment in capital assets. Part of it is actually a financial increase in your financial position, which is that $2.8 million. Lastly, we have the statement of cash flows, which just shows the net change in your cash as a result of the activities over the course of the year. If we jump to the next slide, I will just highlight lines in particular. About halfway down the page, we see the $6.992 million. That's your cash flow from operating activities. So you're raising money in the form of taxes, all of your kind of operating activities generating positive cash flows. From that then is what you'd be spending on capital assets, debt repayment, all those sorts of things. The financing activities would be the debt repayment. So you did pay down the debts you had at the start of the year to the tune of $1 million. You did add that $5 million loan. So financing activities are also increasing your cash position by about $4 million. Then we have the capital activities. That's the expenditure on your capital assets, net of the proceeds on disposal of some of the capital assets, including the land that I mentioned. Those decreasing your cash by about $2.6 million, primarily because of the capital asset additions. And then a small amount from the increase in your investments. Ultimately, your cash position increased by $8.4 million to the end of the year. Again, primarily because of that loan. The schedule of accumulated surplus is the next slide. It shows basically the breakdown of that $90 million accumulated surplus that I mentioned into various components. So if we jump to the next slide, you can see that most of it is your investment in tangible capital assets, which is about $70 million. You have a general fund balance of about 8.5, and then you have all of your reserves and reserve funds. I should point out that these reserves and reserve funds exclude the externally restricted, so your development charges, gas tax. Those are included in deferred revenue and not in surplus. But those reserves and reserve funds shown here are the ones set aside by council in 2021 and years past, totaling about just under $12 million in total. And So those things all collectively adding up to that accumulated surplus of $90 million. So lastly, we'll talk about deferred revenue. So that is the obligatory reserve funds, those that are set aside through external agreements, your Development Charges Act, gas tax, your Development Charges Act, gas tax agreement, as well as various others. And if we move on to the next page, you can see those reserve funds have increased from about 1.6 million to 1.85, primarily because of your gas tax funds. You received about 540,000 into it, but only spent 242 in. So that fund in particular up by about 300,000. As a result, those reserve funds have increased in total. So the last graph I'll show you is a comparison of those reserves and reserve funds. So this is totaling all of your reserves and reserve funds, the ones that are in deferred revenue, as well as the ones that were set aside by council within the accumulated surplus balance. And again, you can see that the town of Minto has higher reserve and reserve fund balances than the average of other municipalities, at about 223% of your total tax revenue versus about 187% for the average of municipality. So the reserves and reserve funds are well funded. You're spending money on as needed on infrastructure. So again, the fact that your debt is higher than some other municipalities isn't a particular concern. So the last slide we have is the next steps. So these financial statements that I'll walk through really quickly after this, I promise. They are in draft, subject to your review and approval. With council's approval, we'll get the representation letter signed in order to finalize the financial statements, which will need to be submitted to the ministry, as well as posted on your website, made publicly available, of course. So that's the presentation. Happy to answer any more questions, or I can jump into the statements. I've already covered them by and large through the presentation, so I won't take too much more of your time.
Questions? Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Great. Okay. So really quickly on the financial statements themselves. If we just jump a few slides ahead, this is the audit report itself. Again, it's in draft, subject to your review and approval, so we don't have a signed version. If you have the second page of the audit report, you can see that it does not have our signature. It's tentatively dated today's date. We would date it the date that we have your approval. So if you choose to see fit to approve them tonight, then we would finalize with today's date. The next several slides are ones that I've more or less already covered. So the statement of financial position, statement of operations, the statement of changes in net financial assets, and the statement of cash flows. Those were all covered in the presentation. I'm going to jump forward several more pages to note number 8, which is page 13 of the financial statements. There we go. This is where we get into some more of the balances. I did talk about the deferred revenue, which is those obligatory reserve funds. Long-term debt just shows the various loans the municipality has taken on over the last number of years. And so the balances carry on to the next page. All of the loans have been paid down over the course of the regular repayment schedules. You can see on this page the new loan on the second last line there, the $5.16 million. And then down at the bottom, the repayment schedule for loans you do have. Again, you're paying down about $1.2 million per year on those loans. The next page shows the reconciliation of the budget that we show in the financial statements on statement of operations here. Your budget that's passed by council. You pass a budget at council, it's done based on the cash flow needs and cash generation of the municipality. That doesn't tie in as neatly to the financial statements. So to compare apples to apples, we need to kind of reconcile and show the two and tie them in. So the budgeted surplus this year of 3.5 million, 3.48 million is what you see on the statement of operations, but you won't see that in the budget when you're passed by council, because again, it's more on a cash basis. We have some information on grants and other income on this page, just breaking out those components. And that's kind of the bulk of the rest of the notes. We do have schedules for tangible capital assets on page number 18. So this just shows the capital assets by asset type: land, buildings, vehicles, equipment, transportation infrastructure, environmental infrastructure, the additions in the year, disposals in the year, and then the amortization, just to tie into the total that we saw in the statement of financial position. So this just gives that breakdown. The next schedule is that schedule of accumulated surplus that I covered in the presentation. And then the last schedule, the schedule of segmented disclosure, which shows revenues and expenses by department and by type. So this is more detail than we saw in the statement of operations, because it breaks down revenues by department, which we didn't have, and it breaks down expenses by type, which we didn't have on the statement of operations. So just to provide even more transparency and information that's presented here. The very last pages are just the trust funds, which just have a small amount of activity and an overall increase in the fund balances of about $20,000 on the year. So that is my presentation. Once again, I thank you for the opportunity to present. I do want to thank Gordon and the town staff for getting us to this point. An audit is an onerous process at the best of times, but when it's a first-year audit and you're doing it under COVID conditions, it becomes even more so. So thank you, and we will certainly need to be here much sooner in 2023 for the 2022 audit.
Any other questions for Murray? Mayor Britt, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor Turton. And I just want to thank you, Murray, for, I know it's a tough one. I know Gordon was kind of pulling his hair out for a while.
Yeah.
But especially, and I have 30 years banking background, so I understand audits, but yeah, having a new audit system and with COVID, it made it even worse. But yeah, we got through it, and I liked your graphs. I'm a little reluctant to compare because we get them at the county level too, and you know, comparison wise. But your explanation of them was good, and I pride the fact that this council has been very interested in making sure we have a good financial back, but also to spend our money at the right times and spend it with getting capital grants and using those capital grants to allow us to do infrastructure. It was nice to see the graph showing that, because I think sometimes it's easy to not spend any money and then have a nice balance sheet at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, your infrastructure still has to be replaced. And we all know under the mandate that we get from the government that we have to replace it. We can never spend the amount of money for our deficit we've got. Gord would be tearing his hair out because we'd really be in debt. And one of the nice things today at county, I was at the financial thing at Long County today, and just let I think I maybe mentioned the council already, but the county just obtained a AAA stable rating from Standard & Poor's. And part of it is on the municipalities that they represent as well. And that, by the way, gives us the opportunity to borrow at that rate, at that good rating, because technically we don't have our own rating, but we use the county rating. So, yeah, and not that we borrow always from the county, Gord, but we have taken advantage of that from time to time. And some of those interest rates look pretty good now, don't they?
Yeah, I've got to say, I think we can congratulate the council and the staff for doing the right thing about a year ago.
Yeah, we kind of knew that was going to happen. I think.
Yeah, and you can see our actions. That's why our cash balance is so high, and it's for the clarifier, the 12th line,
Big
the
project.
Whites Road, and the Palmerston and Reading Project. It's those four, which we knew were coming. And, you know, you're going to see a real difference in the capital additions are going to be really high in 22. But yeah, like, I think we did hit the low point of the interest rate cycle. That's going to make us really think twice about borrowing more until this calms down. And the other, this is our second complete year under COVID conditions. So comparisons, and even going forward, hopefully 22 is going to be a little more like 2019. Yeah, and you can just see the effect in like the lower recreation revenue, the higher protection and all that too. But no, I just wanted to thank Murray and his staff too. Yeah, ironically, I know this is like October, but we probably had 90% of the audit work done in April. But that 90%, as you can see on our statement of financial position, covers about 10% of the value. You've got to get those capital assets done. And that's the hard part. And plus, every firm does things a little differently. So we have some presentation and different issues. But no, I'm confident 22 will be much smoother. Yes.
Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
I'm probably overlooking it, but I'm not sure where this is involved, but the Lions Medical Center, is it involved in? our
No, it is
budget at
not.
all? Is that
It-
because
it's-
we're a separate organization?
It's a separate corporation. Speaking of which, that one has a June year end, and we also have RLB. And that is an audit for the first time. It's always been what they call a notice to reader. But council wished an audit, and I totally agreed. And also, as you know, we're going to the bank to get a mortgage, and having an audit certainly will make them feel a lot more comfortable. And we should have those statements probably within the month, I'm thinking. Yeah, I think you're working on draft and the field work's done. Again, it's one of those things we inherited. It has a June 30th year end.
Realize that, and I wondered because we're a separate corporation, whether that would be done separately. but that would-
Yes, it's completely separate other than, this is the benefit of having the same audit firm look at both, all the organization transactions and balances, they can independently verify them too, so.
Right, thanks.
Good.
Other questions? No? No, I would like to say the same as our mayor, Murray, on behalf of the council. It was a great report. There was some great comparisons. We are an aggressive, small rural community. And at this time, I'd like to thank Gord and our staff for working together with our auditor and coming with some really good, positive report. So, thank you very much. I'll pass the chair back to our mayor.
Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Pardon me. Resolution, 1 second.
one more
We
thing.
got to get these passed so we get the signature.
Okay. Recommendation is moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Gunson, that the Council of the Town of Minto receives report FIN 2022-026 regarding the 2021 audited financial statement and the 2021 audited financial statements and financial information returned to be approved as presented. Jean, you're not saying much. Did you have something, question or anything? Okay, thank you very much. All in favor of this? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Murray.
Thank you.
I'll pass the chair back to our mayor.
Thank you. Now you can get it back to me.
Sorry. Just trying to hustle this meeting along.
Okay, public question period, no public. Okay, that's works good. Keep that right there, number 9. Correspondence received for information. I'll read this and then there's a couple I think are going to be pulled here. Moved by Deputy Mayor Turton, second by Councillor McKenzie. Council receives the correspondence information.
I'd like to pull B if I could.
Yep. And
And I would like to pull the first one
Right.
and ask for your support. It's about healthcare and doctors and nurses. So you've read it, so
yeah,
I would like to get that moved along as quickly as we
I
could.
think we anticipated it somewhat, so I think Annaleen has some.
My suggestion for the resolution would be pretty well the same as it is written.
Yep.
The only change would be that instead of saying the Council of Municipality of Huron Shores, we would say Town of Minto.
Mhm.
And at the ending, we would take out MPP Michael Mantha
Mhm.
and put in MPP Matthew
Ray.
Ray, and take out all of municipalities across Ontario, but leave in the Association of the Municipality of Ontario for endorsement.
And similar with the
Well, we'll move them one at a
one
time.
at a time, okay.
I'll move that one.
Okay, seconder, Ron, all in favor? Yep. These are ideally coming at the right time. We've been discussing both these concerns, so,
This one's involved with early child
Yep.
care, and financially, they're getting like $18, so they can't get anybody to work, basically is what it's all about. They want to get it up to $25, kind of equal to what their peers get in schools and such like. So I think you have a motion for that too.
So, yeah, through Mayor Bridge and through you, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Elliott, The only change I would make on that is again to remove the municipality of East Ferris and change that to the town of Minto. And at the ending, taking out the NOSDA, which is the Northern Ontario Service Delivery Association, the FONOM, which is the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, taking out all district social service administration boards in Northern Ontario, and taking out all Ontario municipalities, and leaving the rest in to request their support and advocacy for this resolution.
Moved by, you have a question?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Who sets the rates for the childcare workers? Can we arbitrarily say, put it to 25,000 or?
Well, I don't think we're doing
$25 an
that.
hour?
We're suggesting that we move them to $25.
Suggesting they get,
You are, though. You said
Yes,
that.
we are, if we pass it.
if we pass this, we're saying that they're underpaid and the reason we can't get any, that they should be looking at, whoever has that authority to do it, Mark, we're just putting it out there that
We don't know who that is.
Province of Ontario. I believe.
Province of Ontario, I don't, for the ones that are social, that they're, I guess, run by the county or somebody, or we
Right.
get funding from the council, right? It'd be whoever gives the funding that would be probably, which would be the Ontario government in some of the cases. Like, we're not saying to a private sector that you gotta get somebody $25, like,
No, but
but
So no one getting the
supporting
kind of
communities, we're
education
not-
you need should receive $18. I mean, they get $25 elsewhere, so nobody's taking these jobs that are putting out for $18.
We'll support
go
an
apply
increase, but
elsewhere.
not the 25. Is that what we're?
yeah,
gonna
well,
do?
Belinda's gonna maybe speak to it. Go ahead, Belinda.
Yeah, Counselor Mackenzie through Mayor Bridge. So it's my understanding that the province in their negotiations for the $10 a day daycare has allocated to the licensed childcare 18, based on wages of $18 an hour, eventually to get up to 25. But the situation right now is they don't have people coming into the field to work for $18 an hour. So what is happening, this has been on the economic development radar heavily at EDAC and EDCO for the last few months, is that they're advocating to get that increased sooner than later because there's a huge workforce shortage. We need to get people back to work, and a big part of that is childcare, and having ECEs in that field is important. So it's through the province that they're giving to the licensed childcare providers. They're just trying to speed up that process.
Yeah, that's what I thought, it was the province that has to bump up the wages. The province sets the wages.
Something
just
that's
saying it.
needed, so we
Just,
definitely should support it.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
my granddaughter works in that field, and she certainly doesn't get $18 an hour, and she works for a school board out of London. And she doesn't work full-time, and even as a part-time person, I know she makes more than $21, $22 an hour. She doesn't make 18, and I think she was offered 18 at a job, and she wouldn't take the job.
It's just nobody coming into the field. We got the same thing with PSWs. That they're not being, they gotta get paid more, and nobody's going to go in it. But anyways, so we're just sort of adding our voice to it. Okay,
Through you, Mayor Bridge, we would have a mover then of
Yeah,
Counselor
I need
Elliott.
a
We would
mover.
need a seconder.
Mark's gonna move it, and second by Jeff. All in favor? That's carried, yep. I'm sure that'll get it passed.
I think so.
Just being optimistic here. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, we're coming into reports now. Where are we here? Correspondence, we got that. Did we pass the correspondence?
Well,
Yes,
we just pass individually each correspondence.
fine.
So
we're fine.
I don't know that we need to pass to
whole
accept them
thing.
as information, as we've already passed
Got it.
motions on each individual one.
All right, then we'll just don't do that then. Okay, moved by Counselor Gutson, second by Counselor Anderson, the cultural roundtable minutes of September 28, 2022 be received for information and approves any recommendation contained therein, and I'll ask Belinda to speak to that.
Yep, sure. Just briefly, some of the highlights. The Minto Youth Action Council obviously had a lot of meetings. We included their minutes so you can keep up to date on all the great stuff that they've been working on. Minto Pride has been getting some really good exposure as a leader in Pride initiatives in rural Ontario. So the People's Archive of Rural Ontario is interested in collecting their stories and sharing them, as well as the Wellington County Museum and Archives is having a display from January to June featuring Minto Pride. So that is really nice for that group. The Railway Heritage Museum, you'll want to refer to those minutes from August to see the great report that our students put together. We had over 1,800 people through the museum this summer, which is even higher than pre-COVID numbers. A big part of that is thanks to the Railway Festival, which was very successful. We raised over $5,000 profit. 1,000 was given to the Railway Museum, 1,000 to All Aboard Palmerston, 500 to each of the community groups that provided food there, so the Optimist Scouts and the Cadets. And then we had about another 1,500 to keep in reserve to get the event going next year. So the Railway Museum, lots of great things happened there. We had a special dedication event this summer. The cook car was renovated and opened. So we did a lot of special events and had a lot of people through. So looking forward to what we have planned for next year. The DEI stuff, as you know, council approved the terms, or not the terms of reference, to go forward with the committee. So draft terms of reference will be prepared in November for that committee to review. And we're looking for people to sit on that committee in the new year. Culture Days, we cut back on the number of events this year, but like all of our events in 2022, things have been booming. So really pleased with the outcome of that event. Thanks to Gord and the rest of the crew involved in that. Spark, Gord, Peggy, Megan, and Aaron Raftis were all at Spark last week, and it must have went very well. They were presenting about the Grey Wellington Theatre Guild and youth productions, and I'm at a conference this week called World Talks to Rural, and already had people coming up to me when they found out I was from Minto because they were at this event and heard all the great support that the arts and culture has from our council. So kudos to us. I'm expecting lots of emails coming forward from that. So I think that's the highlights from the Cultural Roundtable meeting.
Any questions? Lots of good activities going on, and been good. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, I think you're up again.
You want me to keep going?
Go ahead,
Okay.
keep it going.
So the highlights from our Economic Development Committee, fresh just last Thursday, and thank you to the council's support for those two resolutions. This meeting was all about workforce. It has obviously been a very hot topic for a long time. We did welcome some new committee members, which is always great. Sad to see some of our previous people leave, longtime members, but nice to have some new faces around the table. So just quickly, a healthcare update. Allison was able to join us, so we did have a chat about the continued crisis in healthcare, as everyone is aware of. We've been attending recruitment fairs. People are not going out to FAM tours, so in place of FAM tours, we're now going to be doing some virtual tours, working with Memory Tree, using some of our footage from our Move to Minto campaign, and doing some videos to showcase our area. Councillor Anderson noted the challenges not just with doctors, but with nurses and the stresses on them as well. And we're just like trying everything we can to support our healthcare sector. Labor market update, Charlene was there to provide an update on that. So you'll note that our unemployment rate for rural Wellington is now 5.9%. Usually you don't like to see the unemployment rate go up, but in this case, we're happy about that. It means people are back in the labor market looking for work. So there's some stats around that. You'll also note that wages, average hourly wages, have increased slightly, but not keeping up with the cost of inflation, which was interesting. So the first hour of this meeting was very gloom and doom, very depressing. Hopefully we turned it around the second hour when we talked about the things that came out of our April workforce meeting and the work that we've been doing. So working with Launch It in the Chamber, we've been hosting a variety of workshops. So Summer provided an update on that. One of them was looking at immigration, and we have an immigration consultant here in Minto that we're going to be working with and connecting to our employers. We did a do's and don'ts of job postings, trying to help our employers with that. We participated in the Day in the Life campaign. So Minto led the way with a number of videos produced for that. So we have TG Minto, the Palmerston Hospital, and C&M Seeds all participated in that, and those will be rolling out. We also are going to be working on the first job campaign, kind of highlighting for youth and parents the importance of first jobs. And you're not right away going to be a manager in a position, but the skills you get in the other roles. So we're looking for people to be involved with that. Also working with the Career Education Council on career pathways events for grade 8s in the new year, as well as job and volunteer fairs again. The list goes on and on. So we've got tons of stuff that's been happening since this initial workforce meeting we held in April. So, oh, and then I would be amiss if I didn't recognize this little award here. Our Move to Minto campaign won a Canadian Marketing Award at EDAC a couple weeks ago for brand identity. So that included all elements of the campaign with the video, the prospectus, the website, the whole gamut. So we're really proud to be accepting of that. And I think that is it. So it was a really big meeting, and our next focus meeting in November is on housing.
Good. Questions? Good. I got a motion moved by Councilor McKenzie, seconded by Councilor Dirksen, that the Economic Development Planning Committee minutes of October 13th, 2022 be received for his information and approves any recommendation contained therein. All in favor? That's carried. Next up, we have site servicing, and we have Ashley's going to work at this one.
So good evening, Mayor Bridge and members of council. So this report is for a site servicing agreement for the extension of Park Street on the west end in Clifford. Park Street is an existing town-owned road allowance, partially within the urban boundary and partially outside of it. Council may recall this subject coming before them with the consent application to sever the future development portion of 41 Park Street West that's within the urban boundary of Clifford from the remainder of the property that is used agriculturally and outside of the urban boundary. The consent has been conditionally approved by the Land Division Committee with a condition that a site servicing agreement for the extension of Park Street be entered into. This is because when the parcel is severed from the proposed retained, which is the farmland portion, it would no longer have an independent constructed access, particularly for farm equipment, to the travel portion of Park Street. Town staff also want to ensure that adequate water connection is maintained, as the property is currently on municipal water and the line dissects the severed parcel. We also do recognize that with the future residential development potential of the severed parcel, we do not see it as a feasible or efficient option to have farm equipment accessing the property through a future subdivision, both from a road maintenance perspective and a functionality perspective for the farmers. So the site servicing agreement outlines that Park Street and the associated infrastructure will be extended to the satisfaction of the town with a gravel base. This will clear the condition of the severance. When the severed lands are developed, it is anticipated that infrastructure will need to be replaced and the entirety of Park Street West repaved at that point. That is when this extension in the bulb would then be paved. This agreement outlines the scope of the works, the responsibilities for all parties involved, and the securities to be held by the town. As is standard with other developments, we'll hold on to 110% of the engineered cost estimate until our town's engineer approves, and then 10% is held on to for a 2-year maintenance period. So the recommendation is that council receives this report. The owner and purchaser will then execute with the town on the site servicing agreement, and we are asking council to pass a bylaw in regular session authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign this agreement. And I'm here for
Questions for
questions.
Ashley?
Quick, I have one.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
Ashley's, I don't know if you mentioned this, but if you did, I wasn't paying attention, but the municipal drain goes through there. Is that going to be affected by this?
Through the Park Street extension?
Yeah, but the end goes across through there, across the highway end.
So this bulb portion, sorry, is a small extension of the existing Park Street. So it doesn't go out to Underway Road. No,
Doesn't go right out there?
no. The extension is 60 meters, give or take. It's not big by any means.
Someday it might.
Not today,
this one.
not
Okay,
today.
thanks.
I don't know why farm equipment can't go through a subdivision. Would there be a problem with that?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I know we've had a lot of discussion around that. It makes a lot of sense. And that's good forward thinking, because who would have thought, like until we got into this whole thing, that was going to be a problem down the road, right? Okay, any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Just wondering with the, with inflation the way it is and so on and so forth, 110% doesn't seem like it's maybe enough anymore to hold back for any engineering that may have to be done or any work work that may have to be done. So I was just wondering if, like, is that a standard? Is that where it has to be, or?
So it is not a has to be. That's totally up to the discretion of council. It is standard that people take the 110%. In the agreement itself, so in this case, the developer is going to be paying for the works. We're holding on the security, giving it back to them once it's built. If their cost to construct it to our requirements exceed what our security deposit has, we would still issue the 100% back to them with the 10% holdout. If after the 2-year maintenance period, there's deficiencies that exceed the cost of that 10% that we're holding to rectify, and the developer doesn't do it, there's clauses in there that we can put it on their taxes. So there's no way we're going to be out of money.
Yeah, okay, well, and we don't want to make it difficult either.
It's a fine line, yep.
Cover ourselves.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Good question though, Judy, and the fact that we have the ability to put it back on taxes, that makes sense. All right, because by that time they put a lot of money into it. You would think they'd finish it. But
Yeah, I would hope so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So through you, Mayor, okay,
Yeah.
I was just making sure that
Oh.
Councillor Anderson wasn't frozen.
Okay, got her now? Okay.
Yep.
Did you have a question, Jean? You
Nope.
good?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to read the moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Elliott. The Council of Town of Minto receives the planning technician's report of site servicing agreement pertaining to Park Street Extension in Clifford for information, and further that the owner, purchaser execute with the Town of Minto a site servicing agreement regarding the Park Street Road extension. And further, the council considers passing a bylaw in regular session to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the site servicing agreement. All in favor? That is carried. I'll turn it back over to Deputy Mayor Turton.
Thank you, Mayor Bridge. We have a drainage loan this evening. It's FIN 2022-025. It's an application for a tile drain loan from BJ&S Enterprises, Inc. and J&K Agro Services, Inc. I'll ask our treasurer to present this. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chair Turton. Yeah, we haven't had a new tile drain loan in a little bit, a few months. So again, I'm sure council's very well aware we're a flow through for this. So the agricultural property owner requests the loan. The loan comes from the province, but it all goes through the town. And there's been no changes to the interest rate as far as we know. So it's been 6% as we remarked. That's been true in low interest rates and now in high interest rates. But Tanya's just checked the other day and no changes yet. We'll see how long that lasts. So this loan is for $40,000 and we're very familiar with the operator and he has a good history of it. So this is the first.
Been here before.
Yes,
So
he
the
has.
recommendation is moved by Councillor Dirksen, second by Councillor Gunson, that the Council of Town of Minto receives report FIN 2022-025 regarding an application for a tile drain loan by BJ&S Enterprises, Inc. and J&K Agro Services, Inc. and approves the application for a loan under the Tile Drainage Act. Any questions for our treasurer? Seeing none, all in favor? Against? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second item here is some housekeeping on this participation for members of council on the Olmers situation. And I'll ask Quinn to, unless you want me to pass this back to you. sir.
He was supposed to, but that's all right.
Okay.
If you
Oh,
want to
yeah,
keep
I
running
can't-
with
I
it,
can't
it's good
read,
practice.
sorry.
It's good practice, I would
Quinn,
think.
do you
eh?
want to talk about this?
Go ahead, let you go for it.
Sure. So as you said, Deputy Mayor Turton, actually, it is for the most part just housekeeping. I'm sure you'll recall in January, Treasurer Duff brought forward a report about remuneration for the next term of council, which includes enrollment in the OMERS pension plan. And in order to do that, you are required to pass a bylaw authorizing the town to sign you up for OMERS. So this is just a really quick, simple report asking you to pass that bylaw.
We like quick, simple reports, so
Yep.
the recommendation.
Have a quick, simple.
Yeah, the
question.
recommendation is moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Mayor Bridge, that the Council of the Town of Minto receives report CL 2022-012 regarding OMER's participation for the council members, and the council considers passing a bylaw in open session. Are we okay, Annalee?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. Questions? Any questions?
Ron has one.
I have
ahead.
that simple question.
Councilor Elliott.
At an age, isn't there an age level where you can't, you can't
70.
participate in homers? What happens if we pass this?
There is, it is 71, I
71.
believe. We looked it up. So you're just not eligible to be enrolled after the age of 71.
Okay,
I know I hit that lovely mark there a while back.
I heard that. Found that out in the golf course.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Okay, all in favor of this motion?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It can be optional anyway, if a counselor didn't want to participate.
No,
Can't be.
can't be.
Isn't.
No.
Okay.
No option. Why wouldn't you want to do it though?
Well, it came to council 4 terms ago and they turned it down. I didn't understand that at the time.
Oh,
because
okay.
It's
Yeah.
you're paying for half of it anyway, or most of it, so it's a good thing.
All in favor of the motion? Against?
Okay,
That's carried. Thank you.
now you can turn it
Yes,
back
I'll
over to
pass
me.
it back to you.
Now you can turn it back over to me. Okay, that's good. Other business, I have, what have I got here? I got my list. I've got, Dave. What you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk for a second about our pumpkin competition.
Oh, yeah, tell us what happened there?
So we have a wiener.
A wiener?
And first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Paul Judge. I talked to him today about him looking after our pumpkins, the ones here, and making sure everybody had one. Him planting them originally, some of the seeds from last year's wieners. And he did a great job, and very proud of Paul. And to this year's competition, $110 in here goes to Mr. Ron Elliott.
Wow, Ronnie got it. Well, I wonder who destroyed mine. I just
That's
want to know.
because I have a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah, I know.
So, so this was supposed to go to a
Charity of your choice.
I hear that.
charity
I
of
hear
your
that.
choice, Ron. So if you,
My chiropractor, because they picked it up, maybe, I
No,
don't know.
no.
I've been thinking about that, and we'll probably put it towards the food bank.
you knew it was coming to you?
I heard that.
How big was it? Did we have a?
We didn't.
I think they had to get a tractor in to lift
The
it.
rest of them are rotten.
It looked big.
Mine rotted out.
We actually measured them.
48 inches or something.
No, 57 yours was.
57.
Oh, and
And the
Judy had
next
one that,
contender was 48 inches.
Mm.
So it's a long way behind.
yeah. Well, mine was no contender, it was mush.
So
Got
we
to be
are,
about 5 inches, I think, and then it mushed out.
Wasn't good enough to go in the real competition.
right, so none of them went down to Matt's, but we are preparing for next year.
There you go. Good luck on next year.
Paul's got things going. So,
All right, and I've got, who else have I got here? Mark?
I have
Jeff?
one item that I'd like to see addressed is the signage in the cemeteries. Hairston Cemetery, it's center circle, there's no signs on it. People reading where they're buried, their family's buried and want to go and visit there, they can't find them. They don't know where center circle is. You see, well, it is, it's not marked. So if the town could if staff could put signs there, would really help people find their relatives. Thank
Okay, good. Jeff?
Thanks, Mayor Bridge. Minor hockey is in full swing, and this Saturday is Minto Minor Hockey Day.
Oh, wow.
So the young guys start at 8 a.m. and it goes right through till 4 p.m. where the 81s will play a game. Raffle baskets. Booth is open this year. The town's running the food
The
booth,
Palmer
so,
Street?
yep, it's open. I believe the new dressing rooms will be used that day. I've been told,
Well, that's interesting.
and the bar will be open.
that's all Saturday.
That's all on Saturday.
Saturday, good.
So come on out.
There you go.
Cheer everybody on or just cheer one team on, doesn't matter.
And you have good teams this year, I hear?
We have outstanding teams, yes.
There you go.
Coaches. Coaches are amazing.
Well, anybody that will coach is amazing. All right, okay, anybody else got anything? Chris, go ahead.
So I just want a reminder that Sunday, October 30th is the last one of the year, is the firefighters breakfast in
Oh, yeah, I saw the
Palmerston.
sign, yeah.
So not this Sunday, the next Sunday, the 30th,
Mhm.
9 till 1. And it's at the Palmerston Arena this year, not the fire hall. Just simply because it's a safer cooking area and we have the proper equipment and that we will move it down there and use the facilities that we have there. So kudos to the rec staff for being able to turn that over because I believe the Halloween dance is the night before, so they have to then clean it and get it ready for the breakfast in the morning. So kudos to them for accommodating the firefighters, but.
Excellent. Good. And I have two. I have one, you'll see the press release is going out, I think probably tomorrow, Quinn. We're finally getting our streets dedications going. It's on the 29th. It'll be at 11 o'clock for the Bridge Crescent and Stevenson Way. Yeah, Stevenson Way and Bridge Crescent in the new subdivision across from TG Minto. So we'll have the dedication. The Legion will be down there, and then we'll go back for soup and sandwiches to the Legion afterwards, the Palmerston Legion. So there's five bridge veterans, one from the First World War, and my dad, and my Uncle Norm, and I guess my dad's cousin Clayton and Bob, and I don't know the first one, who's, and three Stevensons. Oh, okay, yep, now I know who you mean, yep, okay, that's relative as well, so, and then three Stevensons are,
I've got William Oldfield Bridge, World War I, Bob Clayton, Norman, and Milton from World War II, and then I have Elroy, Lloyd, and Lyle Stevenson from World War II.
right. So as you know, we've been doing this as you've been allowed to, the veterans to be honored in this way, so hopefully you can make it out and come back to the Legion afterwards. We're hoping to the families will be able to make it out as well, so that's out there. And one other little neat item was the fact that we just found out that we won the international award for our farmers market boxes at the International Economic Development in Oklahoma City, a silver award, and that's kind of neat for a little town or a little county. When you're international, you're a little county at 100,000, I can tell you, and that was a neat thing. And I know our farmers markets with that box program, we've done a great job, haven't we, Belinda? It's just a super thing, and I think we won an EDCO award as well. Yeah, so great ideas out there and great participation from our staff and getting these things going and our volunteers. So all good news. That's all I have. Okay, where are we? Right near the end here somewhere. Moved by Deputy Mayor Turton, moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Deputy Mayor Turton. The Council of Town of Minto receives a report. Oh, I got that already. You did that. You did that for me. The new mayor did that for me. Other business, I did that. Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor Turton, second by Councillor McKenzie. The Committee of the Whole convenes in the regular council. All in favor? That is carried. Notice the motion. Moved by Councillor Gudson, second by Councillor Anderson. The Council of Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in the Committee of the Whole. All in favor? It's carried. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, second by Councillor Dirksen, that bylaws number 2022-92 and 2022-93 be read first, second, and third time and passed open council seals to the corporation. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Elliott, that the bylaw number 2022-94 to confirm the actions of the Council of the Corporation of Town of Minto respecting a meeting held October 18th, 2022, be read first, second, and third time and passed in open council and seal of the corporation. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Dirksen, second by Deputy Mayor Turton. The Council of the Town of Minto adjourns to meet again at the call of the mayor. All in favor? Thanks for a good meeting, everybody, and I have one more left.